The German sniper had chosen his position hours before dawn, hidden beneath freshly cut branches and camouflaged with damp earth from a Norman countryside. He lay motionless in a shallow depression overlooking a narrow, sunken lane. Tall hedgerows, some over 10 feet high, formed green walls on either side of the road, their roots woven into centuries-old embankments of stone and packed soil. Morning mist still clung to the fields beyond, while droplets of rain slid silently from the leaves on the barrel of his Mauser Carabiner 98K fitted with a telescopic sight. Everything about his position reflected years of doctrine. His escape route had been rehearsed. His field of fire had been measured. The rising sun was behind him. Even the birds had returned after his careful crawl into position, a reassuring sign that nature itself no longer recognized him as a disturbance. To any German sniper instructor, this was a perfect hide. The Americans would never see him. Or so he believed. Hours passed in silence. The only sounds came from distant artillery, the occasional rumble of Sherman tanks somewhere beyond the hedgerows, and the soft buzz of insects awakening with the summer sun. The sniper remained absolutely still. Every movement was calculated. Every breath was controlled. His heartbeat had slowed to a rhythm practiced through months of training. Then, voices. American voices. Not loud, not careless. Just enough to tell him a patrol was approaching. He adjusted his scope. 5 soldiers. Perhaps 6. Helmets barely visible above the tangled vegetation. One carried an M1 Garand loosely across his chest. Another paused for only a second before scanning the hedgerow instead of the road ahead. The sniper frowned. That wasn't what he expected. German sniper doctrine had been built on generations of battlefield experience. Whether fighting French troops in 1940, Soviet formations in the early years of Operation Barbarossa, or Polish defenders in 1939, one assumption remained remarkably consistent. Most infantry moved through dangerous ground looking forward. They watched roads, buildings, tree lines, enemy positions. Few expected death to emerge in the earth itself. The sniper's advantage depended on surprise. One precise shot, confusion. Another shot, panic. The patrol freezes. Officers attempt to locate the threat. Machine guns suppress the wrong position. By the time anyone realizes where the sniper actually is, he has already disappeared. German sniper schools spent months teaching this sequence until it became instinct. It worked again and again across Europe until Normandy. The American patrol reached a bend in the lane. Instead of continuing, something unexpected happened. Without a word, 2 soldiers climbed onto the earthen bank beneath the hedge. One crouched low. Another disappeared entirely through a gap in the thick vegetation. A 3rd soldier remained in the road, not leading the patrol, but watching behind them. Their formation had changed in seconds. Not because anyone had fired, not because they knew a sniper waited, because they expected someone like him to be there. The German adjusted his rifle. His carefully prepared field of fire was beginning to disappear. He hesitated, only briefly. Then he chose his target. The soldier on the bank. Crosshair steady. Finger tightening. One controlled breath. He fired. The crack of the rifle shattered the morning silence. The American collapsed backward. But before the echoes faded, something happened that the sniper had never experienced before. No panic. No shouting. No officers waving their arms. No men freezing in confusion. Instead, the entire patrol vanished. Not retreating. Not fleeing. Disappearing. Within seconds, the lane looked empty. The sniper blinked. Where had they gone? Then the hedgerow beside him erupted. Rifle fire. Automatic fire. Garand rounds smashed through branches only meters from his position. A Browning automatic rifle hammered the embankment. Someone had not only identified his approximate location, they had predicted exactly where he would be hiding. The German instinctively shifted backward. Another mistake. One of the Americans had already circled to the neighboring field. The sniper had prepared for an enemy advancing toward him. Instead, he found himself hunted by soldiers thinking as though they were protecting their own land. Minutes later, he was dead. This scene never appeared in newspaper headlines. No general mentioned it in his memoirs. No single report transformed military doctrine overnight, yet versions of it appeared again and again throughout the summer of 1944. German after-action reports increasingly described American infantry behaving in ways that experienced snipers had not anticipated. Patrols spread wider. Men climbed hedgerows instead of following roads. Soldiers searched likely hiding places before crossing open ground. Machine guns fired into suspicious cover, even when no enemy had been seen. To German observers, these reactions seemed unusually aggressive, almost instinctive. The carefully rehearsed sequence upon which sniper tactics depended was beginning to break down. This puzzled German officers. The Wehrmacht possessed some of the finest sniper training programs in the world. Candidates endured months of instruction in camouflage, stalking, range estimation, concealment, escape routes, and target selection. They learned to build hides that blended seamlessly into forests, ruins, and hedgerows. Patience was treated as a weapon equal to the rifle itself. Some of Germany's most successful snipers, including figures later credited with hundreds of battlefield kills, became legends among their own units. Their methods had proven devastating across multiple campaigns. So, why were American infantry units suddenly becoming harder to ambush? The answer wasn't that German snipers had become less skilled, nor was it because American soldiers possessed superior rifles. In fact, many German optics remain among the finest of the war. The explanation lay somewhere far less obvious. It began long before Normandy, long before military training, long before these young Americans ever wore uniforms. Many had grown up far from cities, across farms in Iowa, forests in Pennsylvania, mountain valleys in Tennessee, open ranches in Texas, logging towns in Oregon, rural communities where children learned to move quietly through woods, recognize disturbed foliage, read animal tracks, and understand that danger rarely appeared where people expected it. Not every American infantryman came from this background. Many came from factories, cities, and immigrant neighborhoods. But the U.S. Army drew heavily from a nation where outdoor hunting, farming, ranch work, and fieldcraft were common experiences for millions of recruits. These experiences did not create trained soldiers. Military training did that. But for some men, they provided instincts that proved unexpectedly useful in the close terrain of Normandy. When veteran testimony mentioned soldiers checking hedgerows, scanning likely hiding places, or moving cautiously through enclosed fields, historians generally attribute these habits to a combination of training, battlefield adaptation, leadership, and in some cases, prior experience with hunting or rural life. It would be too simple to claim that one factor alone explains American success, but together, they formed a pattern worth examining. German doctrine had evolved around defeating armies. What increasingly encountered in Normandy were small American units adapting rapidly under fire. Junior leaders assumed command when officers fell. Riflemen made independent decisions. Squads shifted formation without waiting for formal orders. Instead of reacting exactly as German instructors expected, they often disrupted the sequence before the sniper could exploit it. The battlefield became less predictable, and unpredictability is the enemy of every marksman. The hedgerows themselves amplified this problem. To outsiders, they looked like ordinary fences. In reality, they formed natural fortresses. Some embankments reached several feet thick, reinforced by stone foundations hidden beneath dense roots. Visibility often dropped to only a few meters. Entire platoons could occupy adjacent fields without seeing one another. Every crossing became an ambush site. Every gap in a hedge invited death. German defenders understood this terrain immediately. American soldiers had to learn it through experience. Many paid with their lives. But those who survived began changing the way they fought. Quietly, squad by squad, field by field, without realizing they were gradually overturning assumptions that had guided German sniper doctrine for years. By August 1944, German intelligence officers were noticing something unsettling. Their snipers were still achieving kills, but increasingly, they were also becoming casualties. Experienced marksmen who had survived campaigns across Europe were suddenly failing to escape positions that should have remained secure. Something fundamental had changed. The question was no longer whether American infantry had adapted, The real question was how, because the answer would reveal one of the least understood psychological battles fought in the hedgerows of Normandy, a battle in which victory depended not on who could shoot first, but on who could think like the other man. And to understand that, we have to begin decades before the first shot was fired in France, by the third week of June 1944. The battle for Normandy had become something no army had anticipated. The maps still showed villages, roads, woodlands, streams. But those maps no longer described a battlefield. Instead, the fighting had dissolved into hundreds of tiny wars, each separated by thick hedgerows that transformed open farmland into a maze of invisible fortresses. Every field became its own battlefield. Every narrow lane became a potential killing ground. Entire companies could spend hours advancing only a few hundred yards, never seeing the enemy until the first shot was fired. For the German sniper, it should have been paradise. The bocage offered everything a marksman could hope for: concealed firing positions, natural escape routes, limited enemy visibility, predictable avenues of approach. Years of German sniper doctrine had prepared men for terrain exactly like this. Camouflage became almost effortless beneath the dense vegetation. A patient sniper could watch an entire crossroads while remaining invisible only 30 meters away. Many believed the Americans would pay dearly for entering such country. At first, they did. Newly arrived American infantry units quickly discovered that conventional tactics no longer worked. Patrols moving down the center of sunken roads found themselves trapped between towering embankments. Machine gun fire erupted from openings no one had noticed. Mortars landed with terrifying accuracy. Snipers waited until officers exposed themselves to give orders before firing. Veterans later described the experience as fighting ghosts. You rarely saw the enemy. You only saw the effects. An empty hedge, a single rifle shot, a man collapsing without warning, silence returning almost immediately afterward. It was exactly the kind of battlefield German instructors had spent years preparing for. One veteran of the U.S. 29th Infantry Division later recalled that the hedgerows seemed alive. Every opening looked suspicious. Every bush appeared capable of hiding a rifle barrel. Soldiers learned very quickly that surviving Normandy required abandoning the instinct to walk confidently toward an objective. Instead, every movement became a question. If I were hiding here, where would I choose? If I wanted to ambush this road, which hedge would give me the best field of fire? If I were the sniper, where would I wait? Without realizing it, many American patrols had begun reversing the problem. Instead of asking where they wanted to go, they started asking where the enemy wanted them to go. That subtle psychological shift changed everything. German sniper schools emphasized understanding the enemy. Candidates spent countless hours studying human behavior. A frightened soldier usually looked toward danger. An inexperienced patrol tended to bunch together under stress. An officer instinctively stood upright when trying to restore order. Every predictable reaction created another opportunity. The sniper wasn't simply shooting men. He was manipulating behavior. One precise bullet could freeze an entire platoon. Confusion became another weapon. For years, it had worked. By late 1944, new replacements no longer learned only from instructors. They learned from veterans. The men who had survived Normandy carried invisible lessons with them. Lessons written in blood. Lessons that never appeared in field manuals. Before crossing a clearing, check the tree line. Before entering a village, study the upper windows. Before stepping onto a road, ask yourself one simple question. If I were waiting to kill someone here, where would I hide? That question spread through platoons more effectively than any official doctrine. It became instinct. The Germans noticed. Captured documents, post-war memoirs, and battlefield reports reveal increasing frustration as Allied infantry became harder to deceive. The sniper's greatest advantage had always been surprise. But surprise depends upon expectation. When the enemy begins expecting the unexpected, the advantage shrinks. One German veteran later reflected that the most difficult Allied soldiers were not necessarily the best marksmen. They were the ones who refused to trust an apparently quiet battlefield. Silence itself had become suspicious. This shift reflected something larger than individual skill. The United States Army was not perfect. Its sniper program remained inconsistent compared to Germany's specialized schools. Its infantry often learned through costly trial and error. Many tactical innovations emerged only after heavy casualties. Yet the American military possessed one remarkable strength. It adapted, again and again. When one tactic failed, units searched for another. When German machine guns dominated open ground, engineers developed new ways through the bocage. When sniper ambushes proved deadly, patrols changed their formations. When junior leaders fell, others stepped forward. Improvisation became a weapon, not because it was planned, but because survival demanded it. This adaptability extended far beyond the sniper's battlefield. American logistics ensured ammunition continued arriving even during prolonged fighting. Reliable radio communication allowed artillery support to respond quickly. Air superiority increasingly restricted German movement during daylight. Mechanics repaired damaged equipment at astonishing speed. Factories thousands of miles away replaced losses faster than Germany could. No single advantage decided the campaign. Instead, countless small advantages accumulated until they became overwhelming. The sniper standing alone inside a frozen forest wasn't facing only the soldier in front of him. He faced an entire military system capable of learning faster than it forgot. Historians today caution against simple explanations. It would be tempting to say that American farm boys defeated Germany's elite snipers because they grew up hunting. The evidence doesn't support such a simple conclusion. Many outstanding American soldiers had never hunted. Many German snipers came from rural backgrounds themselves. And countless factors shaped battlefield performance. Training, leadership, communications, artillery, technology, every one of them mattered. But there remains an important psychological lesson hidden beneath those larger factors. The most successful American patrols increasingly approached dangerous ground by imagining the battlefield from the sniper's perspective. That shift in thinking did not replace doctrine. It complemented it. Instead of asking, "Where should we go?" they began asking, "Where would he expect us to go?" The answer often changed everything. The German sniper from the opening of our story had done nothing wrong. His camouflage was excellent. His firing lane had been carefully selected. His escape route existed. His training had prepared him for almost every possibility. Almost. What his instructors could never fully teach was how an enemy would evolve after months of relentless combat. Every battlefield changes the soldiers fighting upon it. Normandy changed both armies. German veterans became more cautious. American infantry became more unpredictable. Each side adapted, but one possessed greater resources, greater flexibility, and increasing battlefield momentum. By the autumn of 1944, Germany was no longer fighting the inexperienced army that had landed on Omaha Beach. It faced divisions hardened by months of combat. Men who had survived hedgerows, villages, forests, and rivers. Men who had learned that every quiet field concealed danger, and that surviving often depended upon thinking exactly as the enemy thought. Perhaps that is why the story of German snipers in the West remains so fascinating. It isn't a story about one weapon defeating another, nor is it a story of one nation's soldiers proving naturally superior. It is a story about adaptation. Military history is often remembered through famous battles, celebrated generals, or revolutionary weapons. Yet wars are equally shaped by thousands of quiet decisions made by ordinary soldiers. A private choosing a different path through a field. A sergeant refusing to repeat yesterday's mistake. A patrol deciding to search the hedgerow instead of the road. Those decisions rarely appear in history books, but together they change campaigns. Today, the hedgerows of Normandy are peaceful. The shell craters have long been filled. The broken trees have grown back. Farmers once again harvest wheat from fields where Sherman tanks and Panzer divisions fought for every meter of ground. Visitors driving those narrow country roads often see only beautiful countryside. Few realize that beneath those hedgerows lie the remains of one of the most complex psychological battlefields of the Second World War. A battlefield where camouflage competed against intuition, where patience battled adaptation, where every hedge concealed not only an enemy, but a question: Who understand the other man's mind better? In the end, German snipers did not fail because they forgot how to shoot. They did not fail because their rifles became obsolete. They increasingly found themselves confronting an enemy that refused to behave according to carefully studied patterns. The Americans learned. They adapted. They challenged every assumption. And in doing so, they forced some of Germany's most highly trained marksmen into a battle they had never expected to fight. Not merely against better tactics, but against an opponent who had begun thinking like the defender. History rarely turns on a single bullet. More often, it turns on a single idea. And in the hedgerows of Normandy, that idea was simple. The safest path is rarely the one your enemy expects you to take.